Ladies and gentlemen, today is March 1st, 2016, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 283, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Kienan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to another show. Today we are going to be going into a commission that was given to me by IronStylus of Riot Games, my coworker, also known as Michael Marino. But this is not him in the picture. This is rather our good friend and also another coworker of ours, Larry Ray, who is the artist behind some of your most beloved champions. He was the main concept artist working on this, along with all the other teams that designed the spells and the particles and the animations and the 3D models and all that stuff, splash art. It all has to start with one mind, and that mind is in that man's head, and we're going to be talking about that. But before we get into that, we got to take a stroll down the lovely lane, people, because you guys have been being awesome and submitting your art. Thank you guys so much for submitting your art, as always. Good. There's a ton, so we gotta scroll not too fast. But yes, if you'd like to go see all of these for yourself, then just type in that tiny URL /KNKL fanart. That could be you. Scrolling past right there. That could be you. Go check it out, get cookies, and have a good time. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. All that out of the way, let's go get it. Let's go ahead and get into today's not tutorial, because today we're gonna be taking a little bit more easy. Right? We're taking it easy today. Today is Storybook Tuesday. We're going to be telling a little bit of a story, and we will be dissecting this PSD. We'll be going through the layers, but it's been a couple weeks since I actually finished this commission, and so I figured what could be cool is today I'll just blindly go through and I'll dissect my own PSD, my own layers, and then I'll just kind of say, okay, well, this is what this layer was in charge of doing. This is why I did this, and we'll learn together. We'll learn this PSD together. And if you're on Patreon, then you can download this one as well. You can download this as well. But we got to get into the story. All right, so this was commissioned by IronStylus, a.k.a. my boss, right here. Oh, wait, that's not the right picture. There we go. All right. This man right here is IronStylus. This is Michael Marino. And here we are singing Arms Wide Open by Creed at a karaoke bar somewhere in San Francisco. But that is beside the point. Point is that he commissioned me to draw a picture of this amazing buff artist of a man, Larry Ray, one of my favorite coworkers, and still one of my favorite coworkers. And so here he is with Moby Frank of Team Fortress 2. Many of you know his awesome concepts that went into that game. So I got that, and this was the commission to do something like this. But of course, we all know it doesn't start like this. My art, as much as I wish I could just lay this down, it has to start from humble beginnings. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right, let's talk about story. Let's talk about that. So with those good old photos, those good reference photos, because that's always good to start with, along with all the other high-res art courtesy of Larry Ray's DeviantArt, I just cycled through all of these different champions that he's worked on, right? And so I used those. I mean, that was just a couple of them, but I used that along with the picture of him. And then I started coming up with simple thumbnails. And I've talked to you guys about how important it is to lay out your pieces in these simple terms first. Simple things. You want to be doing these types of things first. Do not, heaven forbid, you go in there and you're doing one of these, okay? Okay, I said I wasn't gonna do too much of a tutorial today, but I can't resist. I see a lot of people going in there and they want to start doing this type of thing. They'd be like, okay, well, here is my friend's head, right? And he's like here, and then there's gonna be like some other thing in the background, and then like vel'koz will be right here, right? And look at this awesome vel'koz. Oh yeah, this is awesome. Yeah. So we got tentacles there, and okay, well maybe Zach can be over here. Let's go ahead and like zoom in on this, right? Because that's what we should be doing when we're doing thumbnails. We should be zooming in really closely and drawing another little thing here. Okay, there's Zach. And then Callista can be right here. All right, there we go. There's her like big plume thing. And then you're like, all right, this is awesome. This is hot. And then you zoom out, and then it's like, ooh. Okay, it looks like we got a lot of things that are not working here. So this is why I start off with small things, because you want to be able to work from far away. You want to set up your entire picture and get your composition on point. Okay. So the one that we ended up going with was letter E. Letter E, except with a few minor adjustments. And that can be seen right here. So Marino told me, he said that he liked the composition of E with Larry's face and just kind of hulking body in the front. But and then all the champions were behind him, but see how they were much smaller. they're much smaller. Like Braum was here, Callista's there, and it still makes for an interesting composition. But Marino said that, hey, let's have all the champions like right next to him, almost like they're taking a group photo together. So he sent me back this amazing paint over right here of like, and I really liked how Braum like has his arms around like Callista and Jin. And then Zach and vel'koz. It's just, everything felt so good. It felt like they're good buddies getting together, having a party, taking a picture together, right? So I really liked that, and I said, all right, let's do that. Let's roll forward with that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, and again, I'm kind of going into this blind, but let's go ahead and pull this stuff up. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so here we go. Oh shoot, did I not have any sketches? Well, whatever. Let's go ahead and just get into it then. Okay, so the first thing that I actually did here is you look at this piece here, and it's like, oh, well, isn't that nice? But how on earth did Kienan do so many detailed characters and have them all fit together like that? Well, what I did was I separated them out. I made them super simple, right? Focused on one thing at a time, refining one character at a time. Okay, so if you look at this, you can deselect each character and make them one by one disappear. So that was my secret for doing that. So I laid out each of these characters in a way, and I'm working in black and white first, right? Because we're going to be eventually sketch lifting this off the canvas. And if you don't know what sketch lifting is, then click this picture right now, because you can go learn about how to paint in black and white, and then eventually turn your black and white sketch into lines that are see-through in the background. And I'll show you a little bit more of that in a moment. Okay, so here is a good example. Okay, so unfortunately I did not save the sketches of the characters, but this is my refinement process in a nutshell right here. So you can see here is how Larry started. Larry started like this, and then we started moving into stuff like this, right? And you can see in here there's like little imperfections or like little cuts. And you might ask, what are those? Well, there's two ways that I like to mess around with my art early on, and that is I will either like straight up lasso it and like move it around, even though it's like super like chunky and messy, or I will take it into the liquefy tool. Like this is mostly for just like messing around with like eye placements or like moving noses around. I try not to rely on this too much, but as of late I've just been saying, you know what, it's the tool's there, so just freaking use it, right? Drop the stigma. It's like you're a digital artist, so be digital. Use the digital stuff. So see in here, you can change Larry's nose to whatever you wish, and we can make him look even more handsome than he already was, right? So, and of course you got to make that chin nice and big too. So the liquefy tool is always very, very handy, right? And this is another good reason to have each of your characters on their own layer, because let's say that this entire thing was on one layer, and then we wanted to go in there and liquefy something. Well, now we have to deal with all the characters, right? Let's say I wanted to like mess around with this ear. See how now it's messing with the side of Callista's face? And we wanted to make Braum's mustache now giant, right? It's kind of turning into Super Mario or something, right? But it just messes with all the other characters. So that's why it's good to have each character on their own specific layer, especially when you're laying out lines, so that way you can make those tiny changes and think of it in like pieces of a puzzle that are coming together. Much, much better to have multiple layers like this, so you can just deselect and all that stuff. So that's my tip for drawing group photos or group pictures with a lot of characters in them. Separate them out, focus on one at a time, because as I'm doing this, as I am refining this picture or refining this sketch, the same thing I did with each of the characters, which each of the characters basically went through this same process. All right, till we eventually got to something that we liked. I think it was this one or maybe this one. So here's a good example of another thing that's very important to do. More so with people. The characters, I mean, there's a little bit of leeway for how you choose to interpret them. But for people, I really like to focus on capturing that likeness. So let's go ahead and pull that picture up of Larry one more time. So Larry has this very specific face. It's very soft. It's like handsome yet inviting. Yet the burly body is also a little bit intimidating. It's a very interesting mix of emotions that you get when you look at this guy. And I wanted to capture all of that. I wanted to capture that likeness and that familiarity. So a good way to do that is each time I'm going to make an adjustment to a layer, I always will duplicate it. And the way that I do that is by hitting Control J. Control J will duplicate your layer. And then from there, you can make all the adjustments that you wish. You can change things up. You can kind of make tiny little adjustments to the eye. You know, maybe we want the eyes to be just a little bit smaller, or maybe a little bit more closed or open. Tiny, tiny little adjustments. All right, and then what I like to do is I will switch these back and forth. I'll switch these layers on and off, or just cycle between the two, right? And then I'll say, okay, which one of these is giving me the proper emotion, the proper feeling, right? Is it this one? Is it this one? Or is it this one? You know, and just kind of going back and forth between these two and say which one feels more like Larry. This is how I like to capture likeness with people that I draw. All right, so that takes care of that one. Let's move on into the color. All right, because we got a lot to cover with this one. I am guessing. But let's go ahead and deconstruct this layer by layer, and let's talk about it. Okay, so the first ones, this is gonna harken back to the things that we learned with Nuclear Girl and like the noise layer, because this is like final little photo effects that I'll add. Like if you look over here at Zach's little tendril thing that comes off of his head, do you see how that has a little bit of blur on it? And there's a little bit of noise and grain across the edges of this picture. That's put there mostly by choice. It's kind of a style. Really been liking that so far. Just to kind of have this photo effect, like blurred on the edges and like things that are further in the background. Gives it a little bit more depth. And again, the key here is subtlety. You don't want to overdo it. You really want it to be super subtle. See how it doesn't exist like here or here? It's like really sharp where all the characters' faces are. But as it drops off, like over here on the side of Larry's arm, much more blurred. And I'll show you how I go about doing that. And that is right here. So here we have a noise layer, okay? Now I went into creating this when we were discussing Nuclear Girl, final effects. And if you want to go see the tutorial on creating those final effects, just click on the picture right here and that'll take you back. But let's go ahead and continue with this. So if you turn this on and off, might be kind of hard to see if you're on tablet, but there's a slight little bit of noise that's being added to this picture, if you see in there. And the way that I do that is by creating a noise layer. I create a noise layer, and then you can actually see where I've gone through and erased it out, specifically in areas of, hey, look at that, focal points, vel'koz's eyes, Zach's head, all the heads of the characters. It's all been erased out. But then what I do is I set the blending mode to, color dodge in this case. It can be any, just try a bunch of different blending modes. Color dodge worked for this one. And then this right here is the mask where I took away those areas. Oh, and the most important thing, the opacity, look at that. It's only 5%. Only 5%. Don't overdo it, otherwise it starts to really mess with your picture, right? A little bit will do you. Don't forget. All right, so a little bit of brightness contrast. That's great. Gradient map. What is this? Oh, this one is good. This one's good to talk about. So this is also harkening back to what we learned with Nuclear Girl. And this is with gradient maps. Now, this is something that's really, really cool to do. You want to think about it as adding a Instagram filter to your artwork. And again, the key here is subtlety. You don't want to overdo it. But here is, that was also discussed in Nuclear Girl. So yeah, if you're watching Nuclear Girl now, you'll learn how to do that. But what this does is it basically takes the black and white version, or like the darks and lights of your picture, and it assigns them new colors. So in this case, the darks are now assigned this purplish blue, and the lights are assigned this orange. And you might be wondering, what the heck does that do? Well, what that does is it allows you to select different things. Again, this is in the blending modes, and I highly recommend that you go through here and just try out a couple different blending modes. The ones that I found that work best for this type of thing are things like lighten. Lighten works really well. See how it really starts to, I think it really unifies the colors. It really starts to unify your palette, and it just adds a lot of blues to your shadows and oranges to your lights, and that unifies your palette and the feel of your picture. I chose this one, I think color dodge, and then again, look, I just lowered down that opacity. Lowered it down to the point where I liked it. Because right here, it feels like it's a little lacking. It's lacking color. It's lacking that kind of that color dodgy feel. But see, as we add this gradient map to it, breathes life back into the picture. We like that. So anyway, let's move on. So color dodge off. Color dodge off. You might notice that all these little effects layers barely change the picture at all. I mean, look, this is literally all the color dodge thing does. And this is all the brightness contrast. But with those two together, see how it just kind of unifies things? It really kind of fixes the contrast and the values of the picture. Makes it look really nice. All right, so let's talk about bloom. Oh, yay, bloom. This one's really fun. Now, this is very addicting, so I caution teaching you this because this is very addicting. Okay, so bloom is basically any area where light is shining at you, right? It is going to create a glow effect. So see, as I turn this on and off, look at all the areas that now appear to glow to your eye, such as Callista's eyes and vel'koz's eye and Zach's eyes. But there's also a little bit happening, say, on Jin's mask here and a little bit on Larry's cheek. Very, very subtle things that are happening here. And the way that I do this is I have set my layer property to hard light. And then I have picked the color. I like to pick the color of the light that I would like to scatter in this case. And this works really well for things that are bright again. So the best thing to do, I found, is just select the color that you would like to blow out or make it glow, and then you have a soft brush, and then you just kind of lay that down and see how the more I do it, like the more intense it gets, and I can do the same thing here with, say, Zach's eyes. We can make him glow even more intensely. So that type of stuff. So that is bloom, and again, that's a final effect that I do. I don't worry so much about that until the very end. I'm always thinking about it, always thinking about how it'll look, but I don't worry about it till the very end. But it just creates that really cool glow effect. Love it. All right. Oh, this one's really important. Okay, so this one has to do with, check it out. I'm actually adding a little bit of a halo effect or an aura around Larry. Now you might ask, why are you doing that? Is he some sort of divine being? Well, yes, but besides that, it is because we want to make sure that we have our values in place. So if I put that layer over top and turn this piece black and white, and we turn this on and off, I want you to squint your eyes, and I want you to notice how when I turn it off, the silhouette of Larry begins to fade into the background ever so slightly. It starts to fade in with the rest of the characters. So what we employ is something called a bloom silhouette. And this is technically cheating, I'm just going to let you know, but it's done in such a way that it's so subtle that you can't really tell that that's what happened. But it's just changing up the value between the two characters, between Larry in the foreground and the characters in the background. Now, the way that you do this is, again, the magic word of the day is subtlety, because so many artists, I've seen a lot of artists do this, right, where they create the halo effect or the glow behind the character, and it looks a little bit contrived. So be careful with that one. All right, moving on. Okay, so we got a little bit of paint overs. We're moving into the Opie Mask. We can see mostly this happening on Zach. We can see the major effects of this happening right here. So this is all OP time. This is OP time. So we have created the lines, we've laid in the colors, but now we're doing those overpaints. And if I move these to the side, you can see exactly what those are, right? So I just place those on Zach, and voila, he is now shiny. But you move him off, and he's back to his normal self. So this is OP1, OP2. Looks like this was vel'koz. Awesome. Really, okay, so check this out. So I want you guys to take a look here, right here, on his, just the inside of his eyeball carapace, whatever you want to call that. Notice how I have taken the light from here and I have reflected it into this area, or rather lit this area. So it's another really good way to show that your character has a glowing part to them. If you want to have them have a glowing part, make sure it's affecting the rest of the character, right? Good, good, very good, very good. So moving on to Callista. Multiply mask. Now this is really handy for when you want to adjust your values without going in there and manually doing this type of thing. So let's say this was the dilemma that I was having. And again, we can probably show this even better with our value thing. Okay, so let's turn this back black and white. So do you notice how Callista's headpiece itself is about the same value as her skin? For some reason, that was really bothering me, and I wanted one to be the dominant thing. I wanted her skin to be lighter or the helmet to be lighter. And in this case, I picked the helmet to be darker because I felt like it just really brought out the face, made the face much more clear, much more of a clear read in this case. So I used the multiply layer because that allows you to darken your values without having to go in there and repaint everything, because as you can see, there's a lot of like little textures and stuff that we've got in here, and we don't want to go through and just paint that all over again, but with a darker color. So just use a multiply mask, right? And in this case, let's see what the color that I used was. It looks like it was just a I dropped the color that was there, and then I just kind of, that usually is what works. I'll eye drop like the literal like brown color or whatever is there, and then I'll just almost lay it over top again, and then just hit multiply. All right, moving on. I'm probably gonna have to cough really loud here in a second. I'm probably just gonna mute myself. But until that time, let's keep talking. What was that one? That looks like it was nothing. Ah, that's a big one. All right, cool. Ah, okay, cool. So let's talk about this one, because a lot of stuff was happening with this one. So usually what I like to do as I go through and do my overpaint layers, like I said, I do one character at a time, but eventually what I like to do is I'll just flatten them back into each other. Like I literally just hit Control E and just flatten my OP layers back and back and back and back until usually it can turn into just like one or two of them. And the reason why I do this is just for simplicity. I really feel like the overpaints, at that point, you're really just kind of cleaning up the piece, really just making minor alterations. You're not going to be using the liquify tool on it as much, so you don't need to worry about doing one character at a time or having each character's OP layer on its own thing. All right, so we're moving back. Oh, look, I did do a slight adjustment on Larry's face there for this one here. And then here, I was comparing overpainting on Larry's face with the line art from before, making sure that I wasn't losing the character. Oh, man. All right, moving on. So let's see. Perfect. So now we are back to, we have cleared away all of our OP layers. So now you know that the next thing that I like to do is I like to work with colored lines and placing my colors behind my lines. So almost like an animation cell technique. So let's go ahead and dissect these things one by one. So we have what I call the darken layer. I don't know why I called it that because that's not what it is. It is actually the line coloring layer. Now the line coloring layer is very important because what it does, as you see here, is it breathes life back into your lines. Because right here, the lines are all one color. They're all black. And it looks really, really bad. It looks really, really bad, specifically in areas of skin. Like, see on Brahm's face, it looks like he's got dirt on his nose, right? And in here, it starts to make your colors and your values turn like muddy and nasty. It just looks wrong, especially with skin. So don't do that, okay? Here's how you fix that. Put color back into it. See, now you have reds. You're painting reds and colors into your lines. And if you want to see a tutorial on this in depth, then just go ahead and click this picture. But basically, it is a clipping mask. Here, let me go ahead and unclip this, and they will turn into freakish creatures, mostly Callista over here, and Brahm has now lost his entire face. But it is all just colors that I'm laying over top and then clipping them back to the lines. So basically it says, okay, these colors will now only exist where lines exist. And that's how a clipping mask works. So we take that away, and this is what my art actually looks like when you take away the lines. So much of the detail and values even are conveyed in the lines. I really like to do it that way because it allows me to figure out so much of the picture early on. That way I don't have to worry about painting my values in and doing all that stuff. You focus on one thing at a time. Focus on your composition, focus on your lines, focus on a little bit of values, and then you can easily just alter that, change your lines, and color your lines, and then it just sets you up so well for the overpainting stage when you get to something like this. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. So each of these, once we start hitting this area, now we're going to start losing colors one by one. Now this leads into my next point, because what I like to do here is I set up what is called a character mask. So in this case, here is Jin's character mask. And the character mask is responsible for one thing. And that is, oh, here, let me go ahead and get rid of this. This will show it better. The character mask is in charge of just creating the silhouette of the character. So as you can see, as I darken this, it's just the silhouette of Jin. And then everything that is on top of this, you'll notice it's clipped back. It's clipped back so that way it doesn't go out of that silhouette. Okay, so there's the black, there's the gold, and there's his little gem thingy, and there's the red. See, and then it overflows a little bit into Larry's silhouette, but that's okay because Larry's mask is over top of that one. And then we have, like, say, the shirt. And I like to separate each of these materials and colors out. That way I can focus on lighting one at a time. One piece of material at a time. And that makes things so nice. So nice. So let's go ahead and take away each of these, and you can see as we deconstruct each of these characters. Oh, sorry, I did that too fast. So for Callista, take away the feather, take away the helmet. Sometimes I like to think about ways to do more than one color or more than one mask at a time. Like, for instance, Callista's plume and her hair were on the same one because they're both just kind of dark colors. Just, again, trying to mitigate the amount of layers that are in this thing. And there's Zach. vel'koz, go bye-bye. And there you go. Now we're back to the background. And then, yeah. And that takes us back to the very beginning. The very beginning where it all began. Why is vel'koz's eye still pink? I think I did that wrong. I guess I just painted that part pink. Sometimes what I like to do is I will lock the pixels as well, which is this button down here. Direct your attention right there. That little checkerboard. If you lock that pixel, that's also another quick way that you can paint your lines. But I have opted more so for the clipping mask technique now because it just gives you more control. You can always go back to the black lines if you ever need to. But if you ever just want to do a quick and dirty version of it, you can always just lock your lines. And then see, now you can paint them whatever color you wish. You can paint those colors pink, you can paint these colors blue, and these colors green. You know, it's like you can paint them whatever you want. So that's a quick and dirty way of doing that. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and end today's show. Hope you enjoyed taking a look at the PSD with me, the final PSD. Oh yeah, and before we go, if you would like to take a look at it for yourself, then just go ahead and click on this picture right here. It'll take you over to the Patreon, where you can sponsor the show and download all kinds of cool stuff, but specifically this PSD and all the other PSDs from shows past. So go do it, guys. Go do it. Go learn. Go learn and support the show. And I do, of course, appreciate everyone who does it. And speaking of that, we got to say thank you to our sponsors, Laura Bashir, David Chiariello, and of course, Captain B. But thank you guys so much for supporting the show, my sponsor, which you can also do on Patreon as well. And my amazing sponsors from the past. You guys really keep the lights running at night. I love you guys so much. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and end today's show. Thank you so much for joining me on YouTube. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Kienan Lafferty. I'll see you guys next week. And until then, you guys take care. See ya.